Hello, this is Keith Owen. Welcome back. Today's tutorial is going to be learning how to be more efficient in Excel and learning simple little tricks that will make you an expert in using Excel. Our first example is we're going to be using a wrap rows function. So basically, if you get data looking like this over here, we want to be able to get this data in this format over here that you see on the right. So how can we actually do that using the wrap rows function? So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be equal wrap rows, tab into that. Vector is basically your data range. I'm going to select everything, okay, in this column or in this data range, control backspace. And then I'm gonna tab into the next column or next parameter for wrap rows, and it asks for wrap count. Now, what does this mean? It means that you have to be looking at your data, and you have to see there's a pattern here. So there's a grouping of your data here. First of all, in this particular case, you could see by the example over here on the right, your first group of data has your header, product sales, and then all the years associated with that. And as you can see, there's 4 rows in this group here. We go to the next group of data, which is the product here, as you can see over here. And again, there's 4 rows associated with this particular group. So we know we want to separate the data by a group of 4. So as it encounters, after it encounters the 4th row, it's going to wrap the data to the next row over here. So as you can see here, it's going to look at this first group here. It's going to count 4 rows because we're going to select as 4 rows. Once it encounters the 4th row, it's going to go on to the next group of data. So basically, it's going to take this data that's in one column, and it's going to spit out your data into multiple columns. So it goes from here, it creates this data, puts it in columns, in separate columns. As it encounters the 4th row, it knows, okay, we want to start the second group of data here. So that's why it's important to know your grouping here. So as it does that, now press enter. Now, as you can see, it moves everything over into this more tabular, readable format. Hopefully that makes sense to you how wrap rows works. Now let's go on to another Excel function called dget. dget. It basically stands for database get. So basically it works like index and match, but it works slightly a little bit different, but it finds the same thing. It finds what your criteria is. So basically what we want to do is we want to be able to get a unique list of employee IDs, which I already did, and all I did was do a Alt A V V, which is your data validation. I selected list over here, and I selected my range over here, which is all the values in my B column, starting with row number 5 all the way down to the end of the database. And what that does is it grabs a unique list of all the values in this particular range here. So that's what I did here. So basically, as I select a new employee, what I want to do is then spit out the associated full name, job title, department, and hire date over into these columns. So how do we do that using dget? So equal dget. I want to select the database, but it's very important that you select the header values also. So I did a control shift down arrow, control backspace to bring me back up here. Let's press F4 to fix it, this range. because we're going to be copying this over to the next columns. So we always want to know that this range is fixed. So it's function F4 and then comma. Now the field that we want to return into this particular cell. So what the field that we want to return in this first cell is the full name. So what it's important you select the field header name, which is this, okay? Now this, as we copy this over, this field name is going to change over to this column. So we're not going to fix this reference. We want to make it relative, because as we copy it over, we want it to grab the job title and then the department and then the hire date. So that's why we're not going to fix it. Now, what is the criteria? Our criteria is we want to be able to find the employee ID, okay, in this data set. When we find it, we want to get the matching row values, okay? Our criteria is set over here. And our criteria is you're going to select the employee ID column along with the value that's associated that when a user selects this. Because dget says, okay, we want to select the employee ID. That's why we keep the header. And then it looks, well, what value are we looking for in this employee ID column? So that's very important that you select the header value and also the value. And we're also going to fix this. Function F4. Okay, press enter. Okay, I'm going to show you. So as you can see, I selected employee number 5 and it brings back Francis Costa. So if I come over here and select something else, it changes this value. So it came over here, looked for this value, and it brought back that. So now we want to copy this over here so it selects the rest of the data. And as you can see, it copied everything over because we both had relative and fixed references. Okay. And now Phyllis, data analyst, marketing, and the date. So we know that we selected everything. Now let's make this a little bit easier to know we have a matching value. So we're going to conditionally format this based upon the value that's up here. So let's select our data range, Control Shift down arrow, Control Shift right arrow, Control backspace. Now let's go up to Home, Conditional Formatting, New Role, and we want to use a formula to determine which cells to format. So basically, when we want to come over here, we want to be able to know this value here. We're going to make this partially fixed, okay? And let's do an F2 to edit this. Come over. So basically, as Excel checks every one of these cells, it's always going to look for this condition. We're going to make the column absolute, but the row relative, meaning as it comes down here to the next condition, as it selects this range, we want it to be able to stay in column B, but we want it the row to be relative, so it checks every single row. But we want this to equal to the value that's set up here, which is going to stay fixed. So as it comes down to row B6, it's going to check this value against this value and see if there's a match. If there's a match, then we want to conditionally format that row. So let's do a format. Okay. And then we want to highlight the row, make the text bold, but we want to fill the row with whatever color that we want. So it's, and then let's go back to the font. let's make this, we want to, bold, but we want to select the color to be white. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, it highlighted the employee up here. So let's go ahead and select something else. As you can see, it conditionally formatted it. So now we know that employee number 8, it comes down here and retrieves the relative information associated with this employee ID. So this is a great lookup function, just like XLOOKUP or index and match. But this is another way to know there's another function out there outside of the ones I just mentioned. So let's now look at another example. This is a billing tracker. So we got a bunch of client names. We have a bill issue date, bill due date, and we have the dollar amount. We want to be able to know when this person paid their bill. So one way we could do this is by inserting a checkbox. Let's go over here just a second. So we want to insert a checkbox over here. Let's go over here. Select this down. Let's go up to insert and then the checkbox over here. Okay. And if you don't understand this checkbox feature, is whenever the checkbox is not checked, the value in that field is false. Now watch what happens to the formula bar. If I check it, it returns a true. So this is important as we look over, come over here and create a formula for the status. So we're going to do an if statement. Tab over. Our logical test is we're going to select this field and we're going to keep it relative because we're going to copy this down. And then if this field is equal to true, then what is the value that we want to display here? If it's equal to true, that means it's paid. So we're going to do a paid. Otherwise, we can have something as not paid. Okay, now let's do this differently. I don't need to include it in quotes, just type in true. Okay, so now let's copy this down. As you can see now, everything's not paid. So as I mark this off, it changes it to paid. Okay, so that's another way. Now let's conditionally format this range too for an example. So let's conditionally format this range. Control Shift down arrow, then Control right arrow. Let's go up to Home, Conditional Format, New Rule. We're going to use a formula. Let's click in here. Now we want to check whether or not we could do it on either one of these, but let's do this one. Let's check to see if this column is equal to true. F2 to edit this because we want it to be relative. Let's do this. E6. Let's do this again. We want the column to be absolute, but the row to be relative. So it kind of, when it checks the condition, it goes down, it keeps it in the column, but it goes through each and every single row. So we want to see if this value is here equal to true. We don't need to put it in quotes. Then let's format the range. Let's do something else. Let's bold the text and then let's strike through. So in other words, if it's paid, it's going to bold this text and it's going to put a strike through the entire row. And as you can see, it did that. So let's do another way. Okay, marked it as paid. Let's uncheck it. And as you can see, the conditional formatting is now taking effect. Now let's go on to another example. Text split. Sometimes you get data in a format like this. Again, this is one way that you could handle this. This is not the only way. There's other ways that you could handle splitting text within a field. I'm just showing you one way to do this by using the text split function. So let's go back to here. Sometimes you get data in a CSV file, comma separated value file, and it comes with a delimiter. In this case, it comes with a delimiter of commas, which means that each field is delimited by a comma. So let's use the text function to take this data and split it into its separate columns. Okay, let's do the text split. Tab into that. What is the text that are we using? We're going to select the in the first row in the column, and then we're going to be able to copy this data down. Okay, so we're going to keep the reference relative because we want to copy it down, comma. What is the column delimiter? In this case, it's a comma. So we want to put that in quotes. And then we don't, in this particular case, we don't need to use the optional arguments to it. Let's close that out and press enter. So as you can see, it's separated each value into its own separate column. Now let's copy this formula down. There you have it. That's how you could easily split your text into separate columns. Again, this is not the only way to do this particular exercise, but this is just one way. So hopefully these tips will enhance your Excel skills and make you more efficient, because as an Excel user, more than likely you're using Excel every single day and you want to know the ins and outs of how to do things in your daily activities. I want to thank you for spending your time today with us. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and as always, please like and comment on this video. Thanks again, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye now.